A U.S. federal court has issued a consequential ruling in one of the most closely watched legal cases involving former President Donald Trump. A judge has found Trump in contempt of court for violating a protective order, imposing a $250,000 fine and issuing a clear warning that further violations could lead to jail time. The decision marks a serious escalation in judicial enforcement and raises important questions about legal accountability, court authority, and the broader implications for the justice system. To fully understand the significance of this ruling, it is important to first examine what a protective order is and why courts rely on them so heavily. A protective order is a formal legal directive issued by a judge to regulate conduct during an ongoing case. These orders often limit how sensitive information may be shared, restrict public commentary, and protect witnesses, evidence, and the integrity of proceedings. Courts consider compliance with protective orders essential to ensuring fairness and preventing intimidation, interference, or misuse of information. Violating a protective order is not treated as a technical error or minor procedural issue. Instead, it is viewed as a direct challenge to the authority of the court. Judges rely on these orders to maintain control over cases, especially those involving high-profile defendants, where public attention and media scrutiny are intense. When such an order is ignored or breached, courts are empowered to respond forcefully. According to the court's ruling, the violations in this case occurred during incidents in February and March. The judge reviewed the specific language of the protective order, the actions taken by Trump, and the surrounding context. After evaluating the evidence, the court concluded that the directives were clear and that they were not followed. This led to a finding of contempt. Contempt of court is a legal mechanism designed to enforce judicial orders and protect the rule of law. It comes in two primary forms: civil contempt and criminal contempt. Civil contempt is typically used to compel compliance with a court order. Penalties, such as fines, may continue until the individual complies. Criminal contempt, on the other hand, is punitive and intended to punish past behavior that disrespects the court or obstructs justice. In this case, the judge imposed a substantial financial penalty of $250,000, while the fine itself is significant. The accompanying warning may be even more important. The judge made it clear that continued violations could result in jail time, signaling that patience with non-compliance is limited. This warning elevates the seriousness of the situation and places the defendant on notice that future actions will be scrutinized closely. Court records indicate that disagreements over the interpretation and scope of the protective order had been ongoing. The judge examined testimony, filings, and documented conduct to determine whether the order was sufficiently clear and whether the behavior in question crossed legal boundaries. The conclusion reached by the court suggests that the judge found little ambiguity in the instructions provided. This ruling could have meaningful consequences for legal strategy moving forward. Defense teams in high-profile cases often walk a fine line between public messaging and compliance with court orders. After this decision, legal advisors may adopt a more cautious approach to public statements, communications, and any actions that could be interpreted as skirting judicial directives. The ruling effectively tightens enforcement and raises the cost of non-compliance. The decision also carries broader implications beyond this single case. Courts across the country rely on protective orders to function effectively, particularly in complex or politically sensitive cases. When a prominent defendant is held in contempt, it reinforces the principle that court orders apply universally. Judicial authority each depends on the expectation that rulings will be followed, regardless of a party's status or influence. At the same time, high-profile contempt rulings often spark public debate. Supporters of the decision may argue that it demonstrates judicial independence and the equal application of the law. Critics, however, may question whether enforcement is consistent across cases or express concern about the perception of judicial actions in politically charged environments. These debates can influence public confidence in the legal system, making transparency and careful reasoning especially important. Looking ahead, several possible next steps remain on the table. The defense may consider appealing the contempt finding, although appeals in such matters often hinge on narrow legal questions. Courts reviewing an appeal would likely focus on whether the protective order was clear, whether due process was followed, and whether the evidence supports the finding of a